Okay, so today is going a little differently than planned, unfortunately. Last week, you remember I was like real psyched about Gringo actually coming here. I wasn't sure back then, and then it became certain it was getting this really big wide release and all that. There's actually a theater down the road that got Gringo and didn't get The Strangers. That's how fucking wide it went. So I go down there, and the idea is I'm going to see A Wrinkle in Time and Gringo. A little David Oyelowo double feature, so I think. Didn't realize just how little Oyelowo was going to be in A Wrinkle in Time as well, it turns out. So, usually, when I'm doing that, I buy the tickets together. But the thing here is that there was an hour and a half in between movies. So it's like, well, if I'm just going to leave and come back, I might as well just get the tickets when I go back in. So I just get A Wrinkle in Time and then go in there and then leave and then kill an hour and a half and then go back. And the dude behind the counter tells me that the print of Gringo, or whatever, if you still call them prints in the digital age, I don't know, but the copy of Gringo that the theater has is not working and hasn't been since last night. Whatever that means. So, it's like, well, shit. Well, now I've got to pay $10 to see, like, the Hurricane Heist. Or, I'd already intended on seeing The Strangers later in the week, but, it's like, well, maybe I'll do that. Well, the Hurricane Heist had started, like, 25 minutes ago, and The Strangers had started, like, 35 minutes ago. So, I just kind of had to awkwardly leave, because everything else had been taken care of at this point. And obviously, we have one of those theaters where, obviously in the evening shows, the ticket prices, they skyrocket, you know? So, but we have one of those theater chains that's not a normal, like, not what most people do, where the cutoff for the skyrocketing evening shows is 6 o'clock. No, their cutoff is 4 o'clock. Because apparently that's normal now. So, yeah, I wasn't gonna try to do any skyrocketed prices for the fucking Hurricane Heist. So I just decided that A Wrinkle in Time and The Outsider were going to be the video for today. And hopefully I will be able to see Gringo sometime next week, assuming they get that sorted out. So, in the meantime, we're gonna talk about A Wrinkle in Time, which, okay, you look at A Wrinkle in Time, and I had been starting to hear, obviously, you know, Witherspoon has been promoting the shit out of it. They all seem like really, really passionate about it. They're really, really pushing it. And so it's like, okay, there's got to be something to this. I mean, I know the people that made it are always going to be passionate about their movie for the most part and really try to push it. But I mean, in particular, they really seemed like they were building up that this was something special. And then, obviously, the reviews and the word of mouth and all that started to come out. Turns out that's probably not the case. But then you look at the 2003 TV movie, and when you look at that hilarious piece of shit, you realize no matter how bad this new movie is, when you look at the 2003 TV movie, the only place you can go is up. There is no way that you can get even worse than that. And so I suppose that's the case, but then it's like, you know, all this passion for it, and it's like, maybe it'll be okay. And of course, you know, everything Witherspoon does, I go into it hoping to love it. Because I just love her so much, and the way she elevates even the worst of shit at times. Or just makes the great shit even better. And I thought, okay, maybe with that it'll be fine. Thinking like it can't get worse than the TV movie, and Witherspoon's in it. It'll at least be fine, I suppose. But it's not. It's not really that fine. It's, okay, so the thing about it, for starters, is, it's one of those cases where you learn pretty early on, what direction you're headed. And it's just like these little symptoms at the start, and then as it goes on, you realize that the problems will probably increase. Like, start with just little things towards the beginning here, like the whole thing about Chris Pine disappearing, where he's like this NASA dude. He like went off on this supposed mission or whatever, and then he never came back, and this was like 4 years ago. And apparently, this dude is so important that his disappearance alone has, like, anniversaries that are announced, like, over the radio and are, like, national things or whatever. So it's, but not only that, but it's also ammo that her bullies use against her, because that's her dad. So she goes to school and they, like, write on her locker, like, happy anniversary, hope you disappear too, smiley face. And then this is when you realize, oh, so, okay, this movie's gonna try to do, like, a bullying message or whatever. But the thing, because you keep hearing about all the good intentions this movie has going into it, but the problem here is that this isn't, like, bullying. It doesn't feel like a bullying message. This is, like, movie bullying, which is a significantly different thing. This is the kind of movie where you have the bully character, and she, like, lives to be a bully. This person does not do anything else with their life, even outside of school. So much so, this girl lives next door. Now, we can probably assume that she, like, always lived there, and they kind of grew up together, and she always kind of tortured her a little bit. But no, as the movie went on, I started to think, this girl is so obsessed with bullying, she probably found out where this girl lived, and moved into the house next door so she could just obsess over it even more. She just fucking watches her out the window, and just, like, just gestures at her. And and it's one of those cases where they try to back that up with the age-old cliche of, well, the bullying goes back to their home life, and it's like, it's all about how the bully's treated by other people and how they project that onto their victims and all that. But it's like, they do this for, like, a fraction of a second. We see, like, one frame of film to where it's like, oh, she has a hard home life. And then we just go off something else, and we never hear about that again. And then obviously towards the end, it's like, they resolve it by waving at each other. She waves at her bully, and the bully waves back. So it's like, yeah, that's our big, powerful bullying message. Somebody's been, you know, antagonizing you for your, like, whole childhood. They say things like, you should disappear. I'm glad your dad disappeared while you're at it. I'm laughing at you. Just wave at them. That's all they need. That won't get the shit beat out of you at all. So that's just one thing. That's, like, just a very, very small... This movie is, like, 1:50. That's probably 45 seconds. A minute, maybe. There's a whole lot more. So, now going on also... Now, I am not familiar with the source material. The only thing I know about this movie is that stupid fucking TV movie. So, going on that, assuming that is... I'm just going to assume that is very similar to the source material and go on that. Because my next problem is the character of Charles Wallace, whose name we must say in full every time, because that is his name. As if he's not annoying enough, his name itself has to be as well. So, the idea in the original movie, I think, is that he didn't talk to people. He only talked inside the confines of his own house. He only talked to his own family. And then that's the big deal when the three, whatever they are, show up. They're like three Glinda the Good Witches, basically, show up. And it's this big thing that he talks to them, because it's like, holy shit, these people must be the real deal, because he's talking to them. He only talks to us, the family. Well, that sure as shit is not Charles Wallace in this movie. This is like, they decided that they had something, because we have that old cliche of the short little child genius that wears, like, little sweater vests and is smart, and that's his character trait. That he's, like, creepily, like he's, like, 10 or something and acts like he's fucking a 45-year-old Jeopardy contestant. And obviously that is a cliche that most people hate. And every time we see that kid in a movie, it's like, thank God he's only a supporting character, because this is driving me insane. It's kind of like, really exaggerated, like Jonathan Lipnicki and Jerry Maguire, what he was doing, only to, like, the most precociously annoying extent. And he talks to every fucking buddy. This Charles Wallace never shuts the fuck up, and that's his deal. And it's like, he like, parades himself through the playground, shouting at everybody. And it's like they saw that and they're like, oh my god, I'm just salivating at the mouth. I want so badly to do the really annoying precocious child cliche. I really want that. Oh look, there's a character whose whole trait was that he didn't talk to people. But there's our chance. That's our opportunity to use that cliche. Let's take this character and make him that. We have it. And so they just do that. And they just run with that. That's his character now. Just totally a complete opposite. So that's, once again, even assuming, okay, let's just say that's not in the source material and the TV movie got it wrong. Well, even so, this is worse. Whatever other possibilities there were, this one is the worst one, making him the never shut the fuck up precocious kid. So that's a problem since he's such a major character, and we're supposed to treat him like basically fucking Jesus through the whole movie. So there's that. And then we have stuff like, there's, and the way this movie's put together is so weird because it's like, there are occasions to where it's like, you feel like there are like 5-minute chunks that are just missing. Like they were editing them and they like forgot some pieces or something. And so that's just the way it feels put together. And then that also comes into play when we're introducing characters. Most of the time in this movie, if you blink, you probably missed a character's intro. Like, I wrote down on this notebook here, characters just drop in out of the sky. And, like, 15 minutes after I wrote that, Zach Galifianakis' character is introduced by literally just fucking dropping from nowhere. It's insanity. And obviously that makes everything feel like totally disjointed from the start. And you're like, you know, what purpose is this character and what are they? They just become like, they just drop out of the sky as types and they stay that way until the end. There's hardly a change for anybody, and there's hardly anything particularly identifying. I don't even know what Mindy Kaling's doing here. Her whole purpose is the fact that she can't even speak for herself. She has to use other people's quotes throughout history. And so it's like, so there's that. And then there is, like, and there's also, talking about the beginning here, too, is you realize, like, you see the Disney logo and you see the way they're targeting this stuff. But it's like, there's a good portion of this movie where two characters that actually get somewhat background are Chris Pine and Gugu. So, the mother and father. So, the thing here is that their backstory is that they, like, taught this class about the fucking universe and shit. And so there's a whole scene where they're lecturing about that, and then they go home and they fight about that. And it's about, after 5 minutes of this, you're like, this is a children's movie, right? How long ago did you lose them? How long ago did your target audience tune out? So who are you making this for now? What what is this? And so that's, stuff like that is not going to do it any favors anyway, especially since we're still in the beginning at this point. And obviously, it's one of those cases where we know there's going to be turmoil, even if we didn't know what the plot of the movie was, because they're one of those families where their only time we really get much of an intro as them was we get some exposition on a couple of the kids here and there, particularly Charles Wallace, and then the rest of the dialogue is just them talking about their love and how much they love each other. And that's all they fucking do. At the beginning, and then when they're all reunited at the end, that's all they fucking do is talk about their goddamn love for each other. And so, we have that. Well, we're not waving to satisfy our bullies and make them better people, no. And so, and that's not to say that there aren't some decent things in here, I think. I'm always gonna love Witherspoon's presence, no matter what, pretty much. Her character is kind of like, it's like, really, you got Witherspoon and this is all you're gonna do. She's like, she's basically keeps being told that what she's doing is wrong, and then she, like, mugs out. And that's about it. And then she turns into that giant leaf thing with a face. But, that's more visually appealing, cheap as it looks, and as horribly animated as it looks, than Giant Oprah, I suppose. Giant Oprah just looks really fucking awkward. It's like, I think we're taking this put Oprah on a pedestal thing a little too far when you have her as this literal giant, especially the wide shots were especially ridiculous. When it's like, you just see, here's regular-sized Witherspoon, here's regular-sized Mindy Kaling, here's regular-sized kids, and then just Giant Oprah just kind of stalking around. It just looks really fucking stupid. And this is like before Witherspoon turns into a giant flying leaf thing, whatever. And so there's, but as I was gonna say, there are some decent things in here. Like there's a couple of lines that are kind of touching, like when usually between the Meg, who is Storm Reed, I think that's her name, who is actually quite a promising actress. This is her first movie. I will say that about her. And, you know, we do have a decent cast here. But, and we do have lines between her and Pine in particular. Like, they're cheesy, sure, but I mean, I guess they're a little touching. Like when he says, I just wanted to shake hands with the universe, but I should have been here holding yours instead. Stuff like that. Or when she's talking to the principal and he's like, you know, how would you feel, like, what would it be like if your dad walked in here now and saw the trouble you were getting into? And she's like, if my dad walked in here now, the world would make sense to me again. And it's like, whoa, that's deep. Okay. You got a little something there, but these are very, very few and far between. The two lines I just told you are the ones at the beginning and ones at the end. That's how far apart they are. But yeah, I mean, we do have a decent cast here, I suppose. There's obviously the main people. Then you've got smaller roles for, like Pine is decent for the little part that he has. The principal is Andre Holland. You know, Hello Stranger, Moonlight. It kind of, I don't think this was intentional, but I'm going to pretend it was intentional. I love that Andre Holland's name in this movie is Jenkins. So, just so it's like, yeah, I'd like to think that's a reference to Moonlight, so I'm just going to go with that. It makes the movie mean something for this very small character. But then, once again, there's just always something around the corner to make you just say, fucking why? Like, on top of all the other stuff I've said, a lot of this is in weird close-ups, too. And there's some transitions that are, like, the exact same thing. Where it's, like, her, like, like she's between fucking bed sheets or something, like she's getting ready to be taken away to Neverland by fucking Julia Roberts. It's weird. It's like they use some of the same fucking shots when they could have been using, I don't know, some of those 5-minute chunks that feel like they're missing. They could have been doing that. I don't know. But then, talking about another cast member here was that, as I said before, I thought I was getting a David Oyelowo double feature today, but it turns out that was wrong on so many counts. Not only was I denied Gringo, but it turns out, okay, here's the thing, was I know who, or what, the It was going into this, but the thing here is that I saw on the cast list before I saw the movie that David Oyelowo was on the cast list as the It. And I was like, well, that's weird. And then it's like, are they just saying the Red Eyes guy is the It now? But then I realized that, no, Michael Pena is playing the Red Eyes guy. So it was like, okay, I'm wondering if they're going to do, because of course, thanks to these fucking guys, when I hear It now, in somebody cast as It, I assume shapeshifter. Why not? So I get the idea in my head, if they cast David Oyelowo as the It, maybe David Oyelowo shows up at the end, and he's human, and then he'll, like, get to chew the hell out of the scenery, and then eventually turn into the giant underground tentacle death monster, whatever the fuck the It actually is. But no. David Oyelowo's part as the It is, like, 3 lines of recorded dialogue that they kind of altered in post-production to sound evil. And that's it. That's all. So there's that. And then, okay, to its credit, there is the moment when, for better or worse, you could say it does in fact turn into a Stephen King story. When we get to that point when they get to the weird neighborhood and, like, the bouncing balls. And then it's like, and then they meet Michael Pena when it's like his sunglasses and his actual villainy twirled mustache and his colorful Hawaiian jacket on the beach that he wears. And it's like, after a while when it gets to this segment, it's kind of like, okay, now it's getting intriguingly bizarre. And it's like, yeah, we saw this shit in the TV movie, but it's like the TV movie is so just bottom of the barrel. It's like, at least they're putting some life into this stuff. And it doesn't feel like some... I mean, saying TV movie about the TV movie is insulting TV movies. I mean, it's embarrassing. But still, it was like, okay, so they took that stuff and they actually made it intriguingly bizarre for a little bit. But then it eventually just gets lost in its own bullshit again, especially in it, once again, much like a Stephen King story. We got weird neighborhoods, we got weird, colorful characters, and then some shitty, underwhelming monster at the end. So, it's like, yeah, I suppose. But yeah, I did feel like we were starting to. But then, obviously, it's kind of like, you watch it and you look back and you're thinking, like, it's clear. I was talking about how they come off like a few Glinda the Good Witches, just separate. And it's like, yeah, it definitely feels like this story's supposed to be like, kind of, or at least them bringing it out the way they have now. It's kind of like they're basically trying to make a Wizard of Oz for the kids of today, basically. Even though the Wizard of Oz will be the Wizard of Oz for every kid ever, as, as it should be. But, yeah, so you look at that, and I realize it's like, okay, so I see the ambition, I see the intention, and it's like, could this have worked? And I thought about it and thought about it, and I thought about the TV movie, much as I don't want to. And I think about how this movie turned out, and it's like, I think this is just unfilmable source material. And I don't mean that in the way of the source material is so out there that it just doesn't translate to film well. I mean, if the TV movie and the movie now represent the source material that I have not looked at, I'm going to assume the source material is shit. I'm going to assume that this is in fact the story. They haven't really changed anything too drastically, which means I have no real intention of just finding out how accurate the source material really is. So, because I'm pretty much done with this story at this point. It's like, no, I just think it might just be a shitty story. And that's the end of it. So, that's unfortunate. Because I said I was actually going to, like, skip this and just see Ringo this weekend. But, of course, that wouldn't have happened anyway. But just for pretty much based solely on the sake of Witherspoon, is why I sought it out. And just the general hype around it had me curious. So, but, yeah, that's unfortunate. So, yes, that's how that turned out. So, our second and last movie is going to be Jared Leto's Netflix movie that was just released today called The Outsider. And the thing about it is, this is a movie that kind of seemed to kind of fall from grace, because it was built up for a while. Like, the director is the guy that did Land of Mine, which was nominated for foreign movie at the Oscars a few years back, which was pretty decent. And he did a movie about, like, a gentle bodybuilder called Teddy Bear, which I saw, like, it feels like forever ago, but I think it was maybe 2012 or something. And Jared Leto was going to star in it. So it's like, okay, but you look back at the history of this project, and it was originally going to be Takashi Miike directing and Tom Hardy starring. And you're like, oh, now we see what this movie could have been. Okay. So, it's, but still, you know, it's really easy to hate on Jared Leto after Suicide Squad and his, you know, method shenanigans and all that stuff, but it's like, he's still really good. Just in general. Like, there's a reason he won that Oscar. There's a reason he's in so many great movies in the past. He is a really good, really talented actor. And, yeah, he shows that here. Regardless of if the material is going to work or not, Leto does what he needs to just fine. It's the movie around him that's having a lot of issues. So, we're obviously in 1954 in Japan, and we're post-World War II, so there's a lot of friction still going on. And the way it presents itself at the start is a little off-putting, because we have him and his cellmate, Tadanobu Asano, who we know from... He's probably most known now for his more American movies, like the Thor trilogy, and he was in Scorsese's Silence. But obviously, like, going back to Mika, he was in, you know, Ichi the Killer and all that, and I think he was in, Beat Takeshi's, Stab It, Zatoichi, no pun intended. And the two of them are cellmates in this really, you know, fucked up prison in Japan, but it's like, it feels like we've been dropped in the middle of the movie when we're seeing these scenes, because that's where we very much start. And usually that's like kind of an effective way of doing things, where it feels like you just drop the audience in and they have to put the pieces together real quick, and then the movie goes on. But it's like, it's not in that effective way. It just kind of feels like the movie's in a damn hurry because it wants the whole prison sequence to be a pre-opening title scene. So it's like a whole 10-minute thing, and then we get the opening credits as he's released. It's like, I think that's how they wanted to do it. So we had to get all this shit crammed into one real quick. Not telling us anything about how these two characters really relate to each other, how they get along, if they were always kind of, you know, by each other's side. Because the thing is like, they're in the same cell, and then Leto hands him some food, and then he's like, hey, I'm gonna fucking stab myself and get you out of here, and you're coming with me. So, it's like, okay, that's their relationship. Don't know how long they've known each other. Don't know how long they've been in here. Nothing. Nothing about how these two relate whatsoever. But apparently they're close enough, even though we don't really get this vibe much, except that he handed him some food, that he's willing to take him along with this. So, and then it basically kind of turns into the Iceman, only with the Yakuza instead of you know, whatever the fuck Ray Liotta was doing in that movie. My favorite movie of that year, and it's just the normal mob stuff, basically. So, once we get past that, we do get into stuff to where it feels very much like every other crime movie. Like I said, if you've seen movies like The Iceman or anything like that, that's not a whole lot's changing. We're just doing kind of run-of-the-mill crime movie now, which is a shame because it does seem like it's setting up to kind of maybe say something or do something a little more significant, with the whole idea of, because it's one of those cases where you're like, you know, why not cast a Japanese actor? Why Jared Leto or Tom Hardy or something like that? And it's like, well, first off, you look at the title. Secondly, the whole setup is that this dude does not belong. He sticks out like a sore thumb in this world. And it's like, there could be, you know, things to be said in that, and kind of watching this, and maybe, not even blatantly, like, you could throw in a whole bunch of subtle things in there. But no, it's as straightforward as it looks. There's nothing below or above the surface here. We're just right here in the middle, and it just does its thing until it stops. And it's all things we've pretty much seen before. The same betrayals, the same revenge cycles, all that stuff. There's like, the scene with Emile Hirsch feels like it should really, once again, perhaps a scene we've seen in many movies before, but hey, it's the chance for the movie to have some flair or something, to add some suspense to it. And it just goes like so quickly, and like it escalates so fast to get to the point that we know it's going to get to, but I mean, even though we know when it's going to get to, the fun is getting there. But they don't want to take that fun, scenic route. They just want to get right to it. And obviously it ends up being a scene to where it's like, it's a very familiar scene that also had Jared Leto in it, but in this case he was once in the Emile Hirsch position now. Where he's brought back to somebody's apartment, and he's sitting there oblivious to the goings-on behind him until something happens. Nobody shouts, "Hey, Paul," in this scene, but that's the only thing that was missing. And so, oh, the music, obviously. But, and there are also moments where it's like, there's no, and if you're looking for this kind of thing, no particular visual flair, there's no, it's the Netflix aesthetic. I think that can pretty much be trademarked at this point. There's, like, we just had a Netflix movie nominated for an Oscar in cinematography, but I mean, even so, there's just that same kind of bland-ass look to it that really just has no particular spark to it. And what's really the bland parts are the parts that just don't look dark. And that's all there is to that. And then there's moments like you would expect in a movie like this that are usually the most effective moments of it, and that is like sudden bursts of extreme violence. And there are, in fact, sudden bursts of extreme violence in this. But the thing is that this movie is so run-of-the-mill that even when those moments happen, you might wince or cringe or something, but for the most part, even when they're unexpected, you still kind of expect them at this point, because you've seen scenes like this play out better in better movies. So it's like there is, like the finger scene. The finger scene is, like, so matter-of-fact, it might just totally catch you off guard. except for the fact that they do it 3 times, and by then it's worn off. But I mean, the first time it happens, you're just kind of like, it does hit you in that way. But that's pretty much all we get in that. Despite all the graphic violence in this movie, even that's not very hard hitting because, like I said, it just comes with the territory at this point, and the movie doesn't do it in any new way. It just kind of thinks the violence will speak for itself, and you don't necessarily have to do anything in particular to get to that point. As long as it's in there, the effect will happen, especially the more sudden the better. But scenes like this are orchestrated a lot more carefully than just that, the good ones anyway. And so that's... yeah. But there's also... they seem to kind of be trying to doing a thing here in regards to using not a whole lot of dialogue. There's a lot of silence in the movie in particular cases, particularly the scenes with Leto, where there's some nice shots of him, like where he's just walking to a certain place, and it's fun to kind of watch these kind of one-take shots of him just going into certain places and like through doors, and how quickly the settings change and become more drastic. But once again, few and far between. And then when the dialogue does come in, it is like unbelievably tedious, and it's like you can understand why there was probably a lot more dialogue and they just cut it out because what's here is obviously shit. Like the moments with when he's when he's getting the tattoo and he's talking to the girl, and the dialogue goes as such. She's like so. She says, do you know what your tattoos mean? And he says, what? And then she repeats herself. Like 2 sentences later, he says, what do your tattoos mean? And she says, what? And then figures out what he said. These characters, there's no, despite her being Japanese and him being Jared Leto, there's no language barrier. They're both speaking perfect English. So the dialogue is whittled down to them having to repeat themselves. And you might say, that's realistic dialogue, because people have to repeat themselves in real life all the time. But we're not dealing with that kind of movie for starters. This isn't a fucking Linklater movie. And secondly, it really does just feel like they had nothing else to do with these scenes. So it's like, well, they should obviously be talking in them. It's like, what should they be saying? I don't fucking know. Say the first thing that comes into your head. How about they talk about their fucking tattoos and then repeat what they're asking about the fucking tattoos. End scene. That's what the dialogue's like. And on that too, we have stuff like talking about the bursts of violence and the shitty dialogue. All in one, come to a point with, speaking of Linklater, the Roy Cochran scene, where he and Roy Cochran get into kind of a bit of a war with words. There's racial slurs thrown around. Roy Cochran is very, anti-Japanese, following World War II and all that. And then he's not going to give Leto what he wants, which Leto needs for the gang and all that. So Leto decides he's going to bash his fucking head in with a typewriter. And this is like a clear fatality. There is blood everywhere. You can't even make out the features of his fucking face at this point. And Leto leaves, and they said, he's all bloody. They're like, whoa, man, what happened? And Leto's just like, he'll live. We think that's going to lead to something, and we're like, number one, there's no fucking way that fucker's living. But, okay. Secondly, we never see Roy Cochran again, and nor is he ever mentioned again either, so... It's like they wanted a cool line with he'll live, but that they never planned on fucking paying off, so... There's that. But if that sounds like a spoiler, that's like 20 minutes in, so yeah. It's Roy Cochran's only scene. So, so is there anything else I wanted to mention? Yeah, talking about the build-up to Emile Hirsch, it's kind of like, it's one of those cases to where he's doing so many things in this movie that would get his ass killed so quickly. But the thing is like every time there's a sense of danger, like when he runs into Emile Hirsch at the absolute wrong time, or when he's, the many, many scenes where he's got a weapon drawn on him, whether it be a gun or a sword or whatever, it's like this fucking guy does so many things that would just get him killed instantly. There's just, and he just keeps going, and there's just no sense of threat. And in a story like this, we have to think, For this movie to have been effective, we would have to believe that death was knocking on the Leto's door around every damn corner. Like, we have to be expecting that Jared Leto, they're gonna, like, Billy Costigan his ass at some point. But we never feel like that's gonna happen because he just, despite the dangerous territory, it's like he can just cakewalk through and do whatever the fuck he wants. And in this world of all worlds, is not gonna have any consequences. So, yeah. Massive failure in regards to anything like that in a movie like this. But it could have been a lot worse. There are some things, like, it sounds a lot worse when I talk about it. Yeah, there are much worse things out there. There are much worse things out there that Netflix has put out. There's much worse things out there that Netflix has put out this year. Uh, so, yeah, it's really just, like, it's not even comes off as particularly bad, despite some things I said. Just very kind of safe, while at the same time seeming on the surface like a hardcore crime movie with a lot of blood and shit, but just very normal. Very normal for this genre and this type of movie. So, that's all that is. That's it. So, there you go. That's all I got. Once again, I will try to see Gringo next week, and we will talk about it with Tomb Raider. The plan is to see The Strangers as well, so hopefully I can fit those three in. I'm going to have a very small window of time to do that video, so hopefully that can all work out. And then, yeah, you got, like I said, you got the Tomb Raider versus, there's going to be the Big Bang video, all that other stuff in the next week. So, and then whatever else after that. So, yeah, no need to drag this on.